The discovery. The message that changed everything. Captain Elena Vasquez stared at the communication console aboard the deep space research vessel Horizon's Edge. The automated distress beacon from Colony Kepler 442 bits had been broadcasting for 3 weeks before they intercepted it. What they found when they arrived at the Outer Rim settlement would forever change humanity's place in the galaxy. The colony of New Terra had been humanity's pride. 50,000 settlers had spent 15 years transforming the barren world into a thriving agricultural hub. Families had built homes, schools, and dreams among the alien stars. Children had taken their first steps on soil light years from Earth. Now, as Captain Vasquez's shuttle descended through the planet's atmosphere, all that remained was silence. The settlement's main plaza, once filled with laughter and commerce, lay empty. Houses stood intact but lifeless. Gardens that had bloomed with Earth vegetables and local flora now withered in the alien sun. Most disturbing of all were the bodies. They hadn't been destroyed by weapons or natural disaster. They had simply stopped living, all at once, as if someone had switched off the spark of life itself. Dr. Marcus Webb, the expedition's xenobiologist, ran his scanner over the corpses with trembling hands. His readings confirmed their worst fears. "It's a biological weapon," he whispered. "Something that targets human DNA specifically." They didn't even have time to run. The final transmission from Colony Administrator Rachel Torres played from the settlement's emergency broadcast system. Her voice, steady despite the horror unfolding around her, delivered humanity's first glimpse of their true place in the galactic community. "This is New Terra Colony calling any human vessel. The Zephyrian Empire has deployed biological weapons against our civilian population. They gave no warning, no demands, no quarter. They simply decided we shouldn't exist. Tell Earth. Tell them we tried to live in peace. Tell them we failed." Earth's awakening. The footage from New Terra reached Earth's Global Defense Council within hours of the Horizon's Edge's discovery. President Maria Santos watched the recorded evidence in the secure briefing room beneath Geneva, surrounded by military leaders and diplomats who had spent decades crafting humanity's careful integration into galactic society. For 3 centuries, humans had played by alien rules. They had accepted junior status in the Galactic Confederation, endured trade restrictions that favored established species, and submitted to territorial limitations that kept human expansion in check. Earth's leaders had convinced themselves that patience and diplomacy would eventually earn humanity respect and equality among the stars. The Zephyrian Empire had been humanity's greatest challenge in this delicate dance. A militaristic species that controlled 47 star systems, they viewed humans as upstart primitives who had expanded too quickly into space. They considered their ancient territory. Diplomatic protests had been filed, conferences had been held, and compromise solutions had been proposed. The Zephyrians had participated in these discussions while simultaneously planning genocide. General James Morrison, Earth's highest-ranking military officer, broke the horrified silence that followed the briefing. "Madam President, our intelligence suggests this wasn't an isolated incident. 3 other human colonies have gone silent in the past month. The Zephyrians are systematically exterminating our people." President Santos studied the faces around the table. These were individuals who had dedicated their lives to peaceful coexistence with alien species. They had believed that civilization meant restraint, that advancement meant cooperation, that survival meant playing by established rules. The images from New Terra had shattered those beliefs in a single devastating moment. "Send a message to the Galactic Confederation," Santos said quietly. "Inform them that humanity formally withdraws from all treaties, accords, and agreements. We will no longer be bound by galactic law." Ambassador Chen Wei, Earth's representative to the Confederation, stepped forward. "Madam President, surely we can work within the system. The Confederation will censure the Zephyrians. They'll face economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation." "The Confederation has known about this for weeks," Santos interrupted. "They've done nothing. It won't do anything. They see us as expendable." She turned to General Morrison. What are our capabilities? Morrison straightened. We have 47 warships scattered across human space. Our colonial militias add another 100 smaller vessels. Against the Zephyrian fleet, we're outnumbered 5-1. He paused. In a conventional engagement, then we won't fight conventionally. Santos looked around the room one final time. For 300 years, we've tried to prove we belong in civilized galactic society. We've been patient, diplomatic, reasonable. We've played by their rules and watched our people die. Her voice hardened. Today, we stop being civilized. The transformation. The change that swept across Earth was unlike anything in human history. Within 72 hours of the new Terra revelation, every major industrial center had received new production orders. Factories that manufactured consumer electronics began producing military communication arrays. Pharmaceutical companies shifted their research from life-saving medicines to biological countermeasures. Agricultural complexes started developing food supplies for long-range military campaigns. Dr. Sarah Kim had spent her career developing treatments for genetic disorders. Now she found herself in a secure laboratory beneath Seoul, working on projects that would have horrified her a week earlier. We need to understand how their bioweapons work, she explained to her hastily assembled team. Not to cure them, but to improve them. If they want to fight with biology, we'll show them what 3 centuries of human medical advancement can accomplish. In the orbital shipyards above Luna, construction crews worked around the clock to retrofit civilian vessels for military use. The passenger liner New Horizon emerged from the yards as a troop transport. The cargo hauler Iron Mountain became a mobile weapons platform. Every ship humanity could build or modify joined the growing fleet that would carry Earth's response to the stars. The recruitment centers that opened in every major city were overwhelmed with volunteers. Parents who had lost children on distant colonies stood beside young graduates who had planned careers in interstellar commerce. Veterans of humanity's small-scale conflicts served alongside civilians who had never held weapons. They were united by a simple understanding. The galaxy had decided humanity didn't deserve to exist, and they were going to prove it wrong. Training programs that had been designed for peacekeeping forces were scrapped and replaced with curricula focused on one objective: the complete destruction of enemy capability. Human military doctrine, shaped by centuries of limited conflicts and defensive thinking, evolved overnight into something that alarmed even its creators. Colonel Lisa Jung, newly appointed to lead the Expeditionary Forces Special Operations Division, addressed her first class of recruits. The rules we've followed, the conventions we've respected, the limitations we've accepted, none of that applies anymore. The Zephyrians have shown us what they think of human life. We're going to show them what humans think of Zephyrian civilization. The point of no return. The Zephyrian ambassador to Earth arrived at the United Nations building in New York exactly 1 week after the new Terra discovery. Ambassador Keth Moore strode into the General Assembly with the confidence of a species that had never faced serious resistance. His blue-scaled features showed no trace of concern as he addressed the gathered human representatives. The recent territorial adjustment in the Kepler 442 system was conducted in accordance with Zephyrian sovereign rights. He announced through his translation device, "The Confederation has already acknowledged our claim to that region. Earth's emotional response is understandable but legally groundless." President Santos rose from her seat in the assembly. "Territorial adjustment. You murdered 50,000 civilians." Keth Moore's head, tilted in what humans had learned was a Zephyrian gesture of dismissal. Primitive species often struggle to understand the necessities of galactic governance. Your colonists were trespassing on ancient Zephyrian territory. Their removal was a police action, nothing more. The assembly hall erupted in angry voices, but Santos raised her hand for silence. When she spoke, her words carried a weight that made the alien ambassador step back. "You have 1 hour to leave Earth space. Any Zephyrian vessel found in human-controlled territory after that deadline will be destroyed without warning." "You cannot be serious," Keth Moore replied. "The Zephyrian Empire controls 47 systems. Earth has what, 30? This is not a conflict you can win." Santos smiled, and something in that expression made the seasoned diplomat's scales shift to a darker shade of blue. "You're absolutely right, Ambassador. This is not a conflict we can win." She leaned forward. "Because conflicts have rules. Conflicts have limitations. Conflicts end with negotiations and treaties." Her smile widened. "What we're planning isn't a conflict." Kethmore left Earth space 57 minutes later, his diplomatic vessel broadcasting frantic messages to Zephyrian High Command. The reports that reached the Empire's capital world spoke of a human civilization that had fundamentally changed in the span of days. Where once there had been patient diplomats and defensive military planners, now there were people who spoke of extermination with calm certainty. As the last Zephyrian ship cleared Earth's detection grid, President Santos stood before a joint session of Earth's global government. Behind her, holographic displays showed the positions of human fleets throughout known space. Every vessel was moving toward Zephyrian territory. None were configured for defensive operations. "For 3 centuries, we've tried to earn our place among the stars through peace," she told the assembled leaders of humanity. "We've proven that humans can be diplomatic, reasonable, and civilized. Today, we prove that we can be something else entirely." She gestured to the tactical displays. The galaxy wanted to see what happens when humans stop playing by the rules. They're about to find out. The reckoning. The hunt begins. The first human strike came not against Zephyrian military installations, but against their communication networks. Captain David Park commanded the stealth destroyer Silent Thunder as it approached the relay station at Zeth Prime. The facility was lightly guarded, considered too insignificant for serious protection. The Zephyrians had never imagined that an enemy would target infrastructure rather than engaging in honorable fleet combat. "Target acquired," reported Lieutenant Susan Hayes from the weapons console. "Single orbital platform, minimal defensive systems." Park nodded. "Destroy it. Leave no debris larger than a baseball." The Silent Thunder fired a single torpedo. The Zeth Prime relay station, which had coordinated communications across 12 Zephyrian systems, simply ceased to exist. Within hours, similar attacks eliminated 17 more communication hubs throughout Zephyrian space. The empire that had prided itself on instantaneous coordination across dozens of star systems suddenly found itself blind and mute. Admiral Thompson, commanding the human fleet from the battleship Retribution, watched the tactical reports with grim satisfaction. Phase 1 complete. Their command structure is fragmented. Begin Phase 2. Phase 2 was something the galaxy had never seen before. Human fleets didn't seek out Zephyrian warships for glorious battle. Instead, they struck at the foundation of Zephyrian civilization. Supply convoys vanished without trace. Mining operations on remote asteroids were systematically destroyed. Agricultural worlds found their orbital processing stations reduced to scattered atoms. The Zephyrian military, trained for conventional warfare between opposing fleets, struggled to respond to an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. Admiral Vorth Cole, supreme commander of Zephyrian forces, issued increasingly desperate orders to his scattered fleet commanders. "Find them and destroy them," he roared during a secured communication with his subordinates. How can a primitive species with 40 ships paralyze an empire of 1,000 vessels? Commander Zekthul, commanding the defense of the Kythera system, provided the answer his superior didn't want to hear. "They're not fighting us, Admiral. They're dismantling us. Piece by piece, they attack our infrastructure, our supply lines, our support systems. When we respond, they're already gone." What the Zephyrians couldn't understand was that humans had spent 3 centuries studying their conquerors. Every trade negotiation had been an intelligence-gathering operation. Every diplomatic meeting had revealed crucial details about Zephyrian logistics and strategy. Every cultural exchange had mapped the connections that held their empire together. Dr. Elizabeth Chen, now serving as intelligence coordinator for the human fleet, explained the strategy to her staff. The Zephyrians think like empire builders. They see systems, territories, populations to control. They don't understand that we're not trying to conquer them. We're trying to erase them. New methods of war. On the agricultural world of HFY, Zephyrian farmers woke to find their crops dying. The plague that swept through their fields was precisely engineered to target the modified grain that fed half the empire. Dr. Sarah Kim's Biological Warfare Division had spent weeks analyzing captured Zephyrian food samples, creating pathogens that would devastate their agriculture while leaving native plant life untouched. It's not about killing their people, Dr. Kim explained to the concerned members of Earth's Ethics Committee via secure transmission. It's about making their civilization unsustainable. No food production means no population centers. No population centers means no empire. The committee had been formed to monitor humanity's increasingly extreme military actions, but their protests carried little weight against the images streaming back from other destroyed human colonies. The Zephyrians had expanded their genocide beyond New Terra. 17 human settlements had been sterilized with biological weapons, their populations erased as efficiently as data from a corrupted hard drive. Meanwhile, human special operations teams had begun what they called liberation missions throughout Zephyrian space. The Empire had conquered dozens of species over the centuries, reducing proud civilizations to slave labor and resource extraction. Now, human agents armed these oppressed populations with weapons, training, and most importantly, hope. Commander Lisa Zhang led the first contact mission to the Altair system, where the native Viridians had been enslaved for over a century. The insectoid species had once been master engineers, but Zephyrian occupation had reduced them to manual laborers in their own world's crystal mines. "We're not asking you to fight for humanity," Zhang explained to the Viridian resistance leaders through her translator. "We're offering you the chance to fight for yourselves. We have weapons, ships, and tactical support. All we ask is that you direct your efforts against Zephyrian targets." The Viridian leader, an elderly female named Clixa, studied the human officer with compound eyes that reflected decades of suffering. "Why would you arm potential enemies? When the Zephyrians are gone, what prevents us from turning these weapons against you?" Zhang's smile was both sad and determined. "Because we're not conquerors. We're not trying to build an empire. We just want our people to be able to live in peace. If that means arming every species the Zephyrians have oppressed, then that's what we'll do." Within months, 17 different species had joined humanity's campaign against the Zephyrian Empire. The galaxy watched in amazement as the most powerful military force in known space found itself fighting simultaneous uprisings across its entire territory. The network collapses. The Zephyrian Empire had been built on a foundation of fear and overwhelming force. For 5 centuries, their massive fleets had crushed any resistance before it could spread. No species had ever possessed the capability to strike across multiple systems simultaneously. No enemy had ever turned the Empire's own subjects against it. Admiral Vorth Cole stood in the command center of the fortress world Zephyr Prime, watching tactical displays that showed red warning indicators across half the Empire. Communication breakdowns had left his forces operating in isolation. Supply shortages had grounded entire fleets. Rebellion on conquered worlds had forced him to redeploy his most effective units to maintain basic control. "Status report," he demanded from his intelligence chief. "The humans have destroyed 67% of our communication infrastructure," Commander Neltok reported. "Agricultural production is down 40% due to biological sabotage. 17 conquered species are in open revolt, supported by human weapons and advisors. Our outer rim colonies are requesting evacuation." Vorth Cole stared at the displays showing the systematic dismantling of everything his species had built. "How many ships do the humans have in the field now?" "Intelligence estimates range from 70 to 100 vessels, Admiral. But they're not engaging in fleet actions. They strike infrastructure targets and disappear before our forces can respond." 100 ships, Vorth Cole repeated. 100 ships are destroying an empire of 1,000 systems. What the Admiral couldn't grasp was that humans had learned warfare from studying their enemies. They had observed Zephyrian tactics for centuries, noted their strengths and weaknesses, and developed strategies specifically designed to exploit those flaws. The Empire's greatest strength, its vast size and complex logistics, had become its greatest vulnerability. Captain Elena Vasquez, now commanding the carrier group that had become humanity's most effective strike force, explained the strategy to her pilots during their mission briefing. The Zephyrians built their empire like a pyramid, strong at the base, reaching for the stars at the top. We're not attacking the top. We're removing the foundation, stone by stone. When we're finished, the whole structure will collapse under its own weight. Desperate measures, as human forces and their alien allies continued their systematic dismantling of Zephyrian infrastructure, the Empire's leadership faced a choice that would define their species' future. Grand Admiral Kothvel, supreme leader of the Zephyrian military, called an emergency session of the Empire's War Council. "The human campaign has exceeded our worst projections," he announced to the assembled commanders. "They have demonstrated capabilities we never anticipated. Our conventional responses have proven inadequate." Admiral Vorthkull stepped forward. "Grand Admiral, I request permission to deploy planetary sterilization weapons against human worlds. If we eliminate their home systems, we can force them to negotiate." The War Council fell silent. Planetary sterilization weapons were considered the ultimate taboo, capable of rendering entire worlds lifeless for millennia. Their use was prohibited by every galactic treaty and convention. Grand Admiral Kothvel considered the proposal with the cold calculation of a species facing extinction. "The humans have already withdrawn from all galactic agreements. They've demonstrated they will not be bound by civilized conduct. Perhaps it's time we follow their example." The decision to target human civilian populations with planet-killing weapons was reached within hours. The Zephyrian fleet began repositioning their most powerful vessels for strikes against Earth, Mars, and the major human colonies. If they could force humanity to surrender by threatening total annihilation, the Empire might yet survive. But the Zephyrians had made a fundamental miscalculation. They assumed that humans, like most galactic species, would prioritize survival over principle. They believed that the threat of total extinction would force humanity to return to the negotiating table. Instead, humanity's response was swift and final. The point of no return. President Santos received the Zephyrian ultimatum in the secure command center beneath Geneva. Grand Admiral Kothvel's message was brief and direct. "Cease all military operations and accept Zephyrian terms, or watch human civilization burn." They've positioned sterilization fleets around Earth, Mars, and our 12 largest colonies, General Morrison reported. "If they deploy those weapons, we're looking at the extinction of our species." Santos studied the tactical displays showing Zephyrian dreadnoughts in position around humanity's most important worlds. She thought of the children playing in Earth's parks, the families building new lives on distant colonies, the dreams and hopes of a species that had reached for the stars only to find themselves marked for death. "How long before we can evacuate the threatened worlds?" she asked. "We could maybe save 10% of the population," Morrison replied. "Maybe." Santos nodded slowly. "Send a message to all human commanders. Activate Protocol Omega." Protocol Omega had been humanity's most closely guarded secret. For 6 months, human engineers had been seeding the galaxy with devices so small and numerous that no sensor array could detect them all. Nanoscale machines, deployed in the wake of every human ship, had been quietly attaching themselves to Zephyrian infrastructure throughout the Empire. Dr. Michael Torres, the architect of Protocol Omega, had based his design on a simple principle. If the Zephyrians wanted to threaten human extinction, humanity would demonstrate what extinction really looked like. "Activating Omega," he reported from his workstation. "All devices are receiving the signal." Across Zephyrian space, trillions of microscopic machines activated simultaneously. They had been programmed with one function: to systematically dismantle every piece of technology they encountered. Starships found their hull plates dissolving. Space stations watched their life support systems fail. Planetary defense grids simply stopped existing. The Zephyrian Empire, built over 5 centuries of conquest and expansion, began to collapse in a matter of hours. The new galaxy. Grand Admiral Koth Bell watched his flagship systems fail around him as humanity's nanomachines consumed everything that made spacefaring civilization possible. Emergency power failed. Life support systems stopped functioning. The weapons that had threatened to sterilize human worlds became nothing more than useless metal. His final transmission reached Earth just before his communication array was dissolved by the unstoppable swarm of human-designed destroyers. "You have doomed yourselves along with us," he said. "Without the Empire to maintain galactic order, chaos will consume everything." President Santos received the message in the command center that had become humanity's nerve center for the prosecution of total war. Around her, displays showed the systematic collapse of Zephyrian civilization. Not just their military, but their entire technological base was being methodically erased. "Madam President," asked Ambassador Chen, who had remained on Earth despite the dissolution of galactic diplomacy, "what have we done?" Santos considered the question as she watched the real-time displays of humanity's victory. The Zephyrian Empire was dying, not through conquest, but through the complete removal of their ability to function as a spacefaring species. Their worlds would survive, their people would live, but their capacity to threaten anyone beyond their own atmosphere was being systematically eliminated. "We've proven that there are consequences for genocide," she replied. "For 5 centuries, the Zephyrians built their empire on the assumption that might makes right, that superior force justifies any action. They learned today that humans can be more ruthless than any empire builder ever imagined." The galactic community's response was swift and terrified. Species that had watched human diplomatic efforts with condescension now sent urgent messages offering alliances, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. The Galactic Confederation, which had ignored Zephyrian genocide against human civilians, suddenly wanted to discuss new frameworks for interspecies cooperation. Admiral Thompson, commanding the human fleet from his position near the former Zephyrian capital world, received dozens of surrender offers from various alien governments. The galaxy had learned that humanity, when pushed beyond their limits, was capable of erasing civilizations with a thoroughness that made traditional conquest seem merciful. "What are our orders regarding the surrender offers?" he asked during his daily briefing with Earth Command. Santos looked at the reports of 17 liberated species working to rebuild their worlds, of former Zephyrian slaves taking their first free breaths in generations, of human colonies that would never again fear extinction at alien hands. "Accept them all," she said, "but make sure they understand the terms. Humanity will not be bound by galactic law. We will not accept junior status in anyone's confederation. We will not tolerate threats against human civilians." She paused. "And we will remember what happens to those who mistake our desire for peace as a sign of weakness." The galaxy had wanted to see what humans were truly capable of when they stopped playing by civilized rules. The wreckage of the Zephyrian Empire provided their answer. Humanity had proven that they could be reasonable, diplomatic, and peaceful. They had also proven that they could be something far more dangerous than any empire builder had ever imagined. From the ashes of the greatest military power in galactic history, a new order was born. One where species negotiated with humans as equals, where genocide carried consequences that could erase civilizations, and where the patient diplomats of Earth were treated with the respect that comes from proven strength. The galaxy had learned that humans could be civilized. They had also learned what happened when humans chose to stop.